Thank you, Stuart. Really appreciate it. It's great to be here in Melbourne. My first trip. I've been to Sydney many times, but it's the first time I've had a chance to explore this, and especially in winter. Last week, I was on holiday with my family on the East Coast beaches, where it was about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, about 85% humidity. And imagine me landing and then, walking last night to dinner. It was a little bit chilly. All right, not quite as bad as where I'm from in Ohio, where we get a lot of snow and probably about minus 10 degrees Celsius on average, but definitely a little bit chilly. And then one other side comment, a little bit of housekeeping for the Google people. And Stuart, great job on your presentation. I think the fake Scottish brogue is really working for you. Stuart is actually from Denver, Colorado. That whole thing, it's a fake. It's really not true. I'm just kidding. No, it's great. And oh, by the way, I think I'm going to rewrite some of your perf comments. You're really coming along quite well in your presentation style, so thank you very much. No, in all seriousness, it's great to be here. What I want to do is I want to transition a bit from the leadership things we talked about from John at PwC in terms of how to establish a culture of change, to the application of machine intelligence into your daily work life, where we're going to enable things like, okay, Google, create a team space for me, populate it with the content around collaboration, invite people from Project X to that team, and do that in a verbal command, as opposed to all of the things that you have to do today to be able to establish a team space within Google Drive and those types of things. We think that's going to be an incredible enhancement to your productivity. But beyond productivity, we think there's an opportunity for you to work in a more modern way. So you take the intelligence of apps, and in terms of helping you work smarter and more intelligently, with the ability to work much more collaboratively, work together to build consensus, to drive decisions, to have intimacy in your interactions with your colleagues, with your partners, and with your customers. So I want to spend a couple of minutes now talking about how do we achieve that, and what are some of the underlying product principles and social and collaborative capabilities that we bring to market to help you become more productive in your workplace. All right, so the theme here, as I've talked to customers around the world, I've been at Google in the collaboration space now for a little bit over 8 years. And I've been watching this whole space evolve, and I've had lots of conversations with C-level executives down to individual store workers, to banking employees, to healthcare providers across a gamut of different industries. And what I've noticed across the board is a theme that we are all under great pressure to be able to move faster, right? The world is changing, and in some cases, you have to make a fundamental decision, right? Are you going to be the disruptor in the market, or are you going to be the disrupted in the market? Are you going to be able to equip your organizations with the right tools to be able to build consensus, make decisions, hear the voice of the average employee to be able to build the next generation set of solutions and products and services? Or are you going to be trapped by the tools and the collaboration methods that we've used over the last 30 years and continually to work less efficiently, to be slower to market, and be part of that organizational element that is being outpaced by your competition, both locally and globally? It's our goal at Google to come alongside and facilitate that collaboration. Let's talk a little bit about how. So the first observation that I would like to share with you as we've watched the market do is that transformation and the ability to affect that disruption is really the end result. It's the end result of big ideas. People are in organizations creating new ways to be able to create new products, to be able to reach their constituency and interact with their customer, to build loyalty, to grow top-side revenue, to be able to manage their operational costs. But if you think about those big ideas, where do they come from? I would submit to you that they come from increasing the level of creativity across and up and down the organization, and from within the organization to your partners and your customers, right? So to be able to achieve transformation, you have to have big ideas. To be able to get big ideas, you have to raise the level of creativity within your organization. But how do you raise the level of creativity and really affect and impact those people that are working together to be able to deliver those transformations? We believe that it's by increasing the level of engagement of those individuals. As I work daily with my colleagues, with people within my organization, between my organization and other organizations at Google, and with my partners in crime as we go to market, if I can raise the level of active engagement, if I can get people to work together more intelligently and more collectively, I believe that I'm going to have a dramatic input on their creativity, which will result in bigger ideas, which then lead to the transformation that people like PwC are leading in the marketplace around different verticals. And in some ways, I would argue or submit to you that that journey has already begun, but there's a problem, which I'll introduce. So people are already working from different places, right, as part of being able to connect with others. They're already doing it from a variety of different devices, right? And in fact, if you look at the millennial generation, which I argue is actually the most collaborative, the most socially connected organization or group of people that are coming into the workplace, they're obviously doing that from mobile and mobile first, right? I'll give you an example of my son. So you don't know me, but I have 5 kids. A very proud father, really excited. And in fact, my youngest daughter just turned 22. So like, where did the time go, right? I look in the mirror and I think, how did I get to the point where I have my youngest daughter to be 22-year-old? And when I connect and collaborate with them, right, I am not using the traditional means that you would do. If I send my daughter, for example, an email, right? I actually did this in a conference one time where at the beginning of one of my speaking engagements, I said, hey, Kelly, she's at school in South Carolina. And I said, Kelly, urgent call ASAP, problem with mom. I sent that email off. Now, I knew it's kind of a dangerous thing to do, right? But I knew that she wasn't looking at her email, right? My daughter, my kids, they're not connected the way we've been trained to work. They're actually working in a different way. Sure enough, I went through the piece. I had about an hour and a half talk, did not get any response. At the very end of the discussion, I sent her a text message, right? And an SMS text message, I said, Kelly, when you come home in 6 months, so it wasn't urgent, it wasn't mom, when you come home in 6 months, what do you want for dinner? Something totally not important, in seconds, right? It was like microseconds. I get an answer back from Kelly, and she says, Dad, I really want to go to an Italian restaurant in our local town. She gave the name of the restaurant. I'd like to invite a couple of friends. I'm really excited about that. Looking forward to see you. So I respond to that, and I said, Kelly, where are you right now? What are you doing? And she responds by, Dad, I'm taking a university examination. I'm like, what? Are you crazy? You're taking a university examination. Like, what are you doing responding to me? But that characterizes the culture of the millennial population that is coming to work, and that's a millennial population that does a lot more from their mobile device. They're looking at the experience that they have on mobile as superior to the experience they have on the desktop, and they are much more collaborative and social in the way they work. So that's a great start, but is it enough? All right? I talked to a bunch of people that are adopting the competitors' products on a daily basis. And I will ask them, and I'll pick on Microsoft as an example, but it could be Dropbox, it could be Box, it could be IBM, it could be anybody. And I said, you've adopted that technology for over a year now. What are you doing different in terms of collaboration? How are you driving consensus? What are you doing to create intimacy between you and your partners and your cross-functional colleagues to be able to drive change in the business? What are you doing different? And the answer that I get back 100% of the time is, well, Bill, we're doing nothing different. In fact, that was the reason we chose that, is because we wanted to be consistent. We wanted to not have to do change management. We didn't want to have to retrain our organization on how to work differently and with different perspective. And then I'll ask the question, how is that working for you? Is your business accelerating? Are you growing your top-line revenue? Are you seeing new innovation get to market? Are you doing things in a way that is really transforming and allowing you to be competitive on a global basis? And sadly, they will look at me at a CIO level and say, not really. Really not seeing that level of bump. We believe that change is required. We believe that a disruption and a transformation actually facilitates that change that I talked about earlier. And in fact, old habits are very hard to break. I'll give you an example. As a young Air Force officer in the United States, I was in the intelligence community, and spent the first 8 years of my life in data centers, active duty Air Force, supporting a variety of missions. And one of the extra duties that I had was to run a first responder team in terms of evaluating our ability to respond to different disasters, and we would do a lot of planning around how to respond to a bomb attack, how to respond to a fire, what happens if there's a protest on base, all those different types of things. So what I did as part of that exercise and building a capability to evaluate our first responders is I would create a Word document. And in that Word document, I would then outline the core of the test that we were going to run, the outcomes that we would expect, the first responders that we need to involve. And what I would do is take that document, attach it to an email, and send it out to the different first responder organizations I was working with. So we had HRT, which was the rapid response team. We had fire, police, other services that would come in and respond to whatever activity was going on. They would in turn take that document and add their commentary through track changes, send it back to me. I would be left with the cycle of then bringing that all together, producing the next version of the document, sending out to that constituency, and going through that cycle over and over again to get to the plan that actually gave us this exercise result we were looking for. Is that the way to collaborate? Is that the way we want to work together in terms of this method? That was 30 years ago. I bet many of you are doing the exact same sequence on a day-to-day basis right now with the tools that you're using, right? That is not the way to work. That actually, I believe, will slow you down. And it's our belief at Google that there's a different way. Imagine if I would have gotten those first responders together in a room and we spent 4 hours and actually worked through the problem. We defined the problem together. What is the exercise that is going to give us the best test to see if we're ready for a first response in whatever let's take a bomb scare. All right? And then what are the different scenarios that we want to run together, and how should that work together? Who should be doing what? How do we actually design the test that's going to give us the best exercise? We would then build a plan of action and choose and prioritize one of those scenarios to actually bring to market, in our case, actually run the exercise. We would then begin to build the action plans around that exercise, and we walk out of that room, we're all in concert. We have built consensus. We've had a chance to voice our different opinions and point of views to be able to get at an answer that really incorporates the voice and intelligence of everybody involved, and we have an actionable plan that we can execute. That is what we believe is collaboration, and we think there's a way to do that electronically and virtually with a set of tools where you don't have to be in the same room at the same time, but you can actually use a set of collaboration instruments to be able to achieve that same outcome. What does that look like? Well, number one, it's real-time collaboration where we're working together in the same documents at the same time with a single source of truth. Where literally I can be working in a document, typing and interacting with a number of colleagues at the same time, and I can plus somebody in like James Snow, who's going to come and talk to you about security in a minute. I can say, James, in this particular exercise, there's a security concern about this particular area. What do you think? James gets that in his email and can simply in email respond, and I get it right here in the context of this document, and James says, Bill, I think this is really a question from Mark Crandall. I've plussed him into the conversation, and now I'm building a social fabric around delivering this exercise, and I'm identifying expertise that I didn't know existed. I didn't know Mark Crandall had that level of expertise. It took James to make the connection for me to build that expertise in. I invite him into the document. He joins, and immediately I can leverage that social network to be able to add power to this document, which will build the right plan, which will achieve the right outcome. And I can do it in a way to where we develop it in a face-to-face. See if we can get this going. So not only do I have a collaborative document experience, but I have the ability to build intimacy, right, with the people that I'm working with, to where I'm not doing this over an email exchange or even an SMS exchange or in a social way, but I'm actually interacting people with a live way where I can click a button, all right, and from that single button, engage with a number of people around the world, geographically separated, and be able to pull them together and interact with them face to face. Intimacy and trust and the ability to actually create a common outcome that we all share is built on this basic core human instinct to be able to read someone's eyes, their facial expressions, to derive emotion and intent, which as a result builds trust and intimacy, which then yields to teamwork, and that teamwork actually allows us to work better together. So you have to be able to combine the real-time aspects of intellectual sharing with the physical and social aspects of being able to work together. And you have to do that from a common core of assets in a common place. So being able to have a single Google Drive where we have all of our assets in a team space, where I can invite people to the team space and they can quickly survey all the content that's available. They can get up to speed faster on the content they need, and they can reach it from mobile, from desktop, from a variety of different ways so that they can all be informed on what's going on. And if they miss the meeting, they don't have to know where to go. They don't have to get the email with the results. They can actually just log into Google Drive. That content is readily available to them. They have a manifest of what's been going on in terms of changes, and they can immediately go to the right document at the right time to be able to inspect that because all that content is in one place. Easy to use. It's not stuck on my box. It's not on the local file server. It's not on the NAS server. It's in the cloud, available to me from anywhere, any device at any time. And then in like manner, I wouldn't be able to do this unless I had the right security infrastructure and controls in that document. Some of these documents involve intellectual property or sensitive content that I want to make sure I can secure. So I'm going to share this security document with the first responder leads, but not the actual first responder teams, because they don't want them to know the exercise. Right? I want the first responders who are collaborating with me, and I'm going to actually share that document and allow them to collaborate. But when we're done and we've locked down the plan, I want to be able to change their access to view only. I want to move them from an active collaborator to a viewer and consumer of that content. And when I go to publish, I can then say, you know what? I'm going to share this with a group of people, and I'm going to say, you can all look at this document for the next 2 weeks with these rights, and I'm going to prevent you from being able to download, copy, or print that document with the right IRM controls built into the platform available today in Google Drive with Google Docs, not just on our content, but any content that you populate. A PDF file, a Microsoft Office document, an Excel spreadsheet, a PowerPoint, the same level of controls are available to you. And then, of course, the obvious point is we're all working from the same music, the same page, right? So instead of having, do you have version 1.6.3? No, I have version 1.5.7, right? Why do we do that? Why don't we just have one source of truth, one document with active change control that allows us to back up in time with a timeline and actually know what's happened to the content throughout the genesis of these ideas so that we all have one place to go do it. So one single source of documentation. So in effect, what we're creating with the collaborative suite that we're building is the software equivalent to that conference room with all the first responder leadership team involved to where we can produce the right plan and build the consensus that we need. I argue that I contrast the two experiences between these two pictures. On the left, I have a sailboat. Multiple people are on the sailboat, but how many people are involved in steering the ship at a given time? You have one person on the rudder, everybody else is watching. They're a participant, but they're not actively engaged in the experience. And they're limited in terms of how fast they can go and what input they have into the overall process. Contrast that with the modern version of a hydrofoil sail, right, where I have a team of people that are working collaboratively together to increase the velocity and achieve a much higher result and a much better experience where they're working collaboratively, everybody has their role, everybody has their input, and they're not just along for the ride. They're not just viewing and making commentary, they're actually active participants. That's what we're trying to achieve at Google. That's the core basis behind the services that we provide. So what can you expect from those results? Number one is that your projects are going to move at a faster pace. You're going to have the ability to be able to finish things in days and weeks, not months and years. Secondly, is that through all the smart innovations that Stuart talked about, you're going to be able to do things and save time in microseconds. One example is the average person today, the average knowledge worker, spends about 600 minutes per month, right? Do the math. How many hours is that, right? 600 minutes per month doing calendaring activities. What if Google was smart enough to just say, by voice command, please schedule one-on-ones with my direct reports every other week, and my preference is to have them on Mondays and Fridays. And Google would go out and figure out who are my direct reports, what are the right times availability globally, because I have a global team, people in Singapore and London and Paris and the United States across the US and Latin America. be able to select the right conference rooms, know where people are at any given time, schedule the right places for them to meet, and automatically reschedule things when my boss, Sebastian, who does this all the time, preempts one of my one-on-ones and saying, Bill, I need you to attend this strategic meeting. We're making a decision about product. We need your input. That interrupts your one-on-one. I shouldn't have to worry about that. I should be able to go and react to the boss's meeting, not even thinking about the calendar, and the calendar should automatically say, I see that your boss, Sebastian, interrupted a meeting with your direct report individual. I know that you like to do them on Mondays and Wednesdays. Let me reschedule that to Friday. And I found an available space, and after a couple of times when I accept it, it learns and is intelligent, and I don't even have to ask anymore. It just automatically reschedules it for me. That's the world that we're bringing to you. That's what we believe we can do. All right, and then lastly here is the fact that we want to be able to allow you to integrate your life to where you can be available for the moments that matter and work the way you live so that you can start to really integrate your personal life and the things that are really important and matter to you with your professional life and driving as an executive the things you need to do. So I've got some other content here I'm going to skip over. We're not going to cut into this, but we believe we have a lot to offer in terms of scalable computing and secure computing. What I want to invite you to do is join us on this journey. Let us help you reach max velocity, but to do so, you've got to have some confidence that what you put in Google is going to be secure, that we're going to honor data privacy, that we're going to work with the regulators in your industry to make sure that you can adopt these technologies in the cloud and do so in a way. So it's my pleasure to introduce a colleague that has worked for me for a number of years. We worked together, James Snow, who's going to tell you all about what we're doing to protect your content in the cloud and how you can trust Google with your content. So thank you very much.